In this day and age, with Ubisoft's quadruple A games absolutely floundering and AAA games being generally successful in basically every metric conceivably possible, except when it comes to shareholders and that line not going higher than it was last year, despite owning more money than the average person will make in their entire lifetime. Tripled, quadrupled even. Those games have taken, in turn, a very safe and predictable avenue of gameplay and monetization. In the general, broadest sense of commercial games, competitive hero multiplayer games such as like Dota, Rainbow Six Siege, and definitely not Concord are extremely successful due to their inherently crowd-pleasing gameplay loops, whether playing them or not. And the monetization strategy within them usually tends to lead to Omega Bucks if the game is even somewhat successful. As far as single-player games go, open-world games are in right now, unless you're Ubisoft. RPGs are also very popular, unless you're Ubisoft. Action RPGs even more so, and while Capcom is out here carrying almost the entirety of AAA on its back with highly refined yet still experimental games like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Kinutsugami, they are still appeasing shareholders by releasing high-profile remakes of Resident Evil games, wildly popular new entries in the franchise, and games like Street Fighter VI to help carry the entire company to be able to do more experimental, smaller games. From Software is also doing a lot of heavy lifting on their end with the genre that they basically invented and pioneered, all culminating with Elden Ring shipping 30 million units worldwide. It is possible to maintain a certain level of respect within the gaming community and still be a wildly successful AAA studio that doesn't have to resort to laying off hundreds of your own workforce. Although when studios like, Ubisoft lay off hundreds of their workers, those employees might just start their own studio and make something that they want to make. And when that happens, sometimes you'll get a confused mess, but I personally believe that with passionate developers and a clear vision, you will often get a very good game that really wouldn't have been seen outside of the core gaming community. And sometimes it doesn't even get that popular. But sometimes you get a game that resonates with 1 million plus people and propels seemingly outdated concepts back into the conversation with games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Founded by roughly 30 developers in 2020 after leaving Ubisoft, they started Sandfall Interactive and they poured their heart and soul into Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And you don't even have to play it in order to understand that. Just looking at this game for like a second, you can get a sense of the passion and clear, focused vision that the team had for their game. It radiates in every frame of footage that I captured and ones that I lost due to computer crashes. The art direction is consistently stunning with seemingly endless moments of me needing to stop and just take in the atmosphere of these locations, each brimming with their own flair and style. You could argue that the game is just a bunch of varieties of gigantic canyons with a fresh coat of paint each time, but honestly, at roughly 30 hours of playtime at the time that I'm writing this portion of the script, I have never gotten tired of it. I'm constantly floored by new variety of locations, and every single new location I need to just bathe and soak in. The music is also composed by an industry newbie, Lorien Testard, and it is a profoundly moving, engaging, momentous, groovin', huge beast of an OST. Seriously, it's over 8 hours long. In the 30 plus hours it will take you to beat Clair Obscur, I've found literally one song that isn't good. And it's not even that it's bad, but every single time that it came up in combat, it sounded like it was from a generic iPhone commercial from 2012, and I laughed every time I heard it. I can't unhear it now. Narratively, Clair Obscur tells a genuinely engaging story that hits deep introspective looks at the way that we handle grief, death, and the simple act of moving on through all that. but at the same time has these excellent characters that all have their own quirks and ways that they see the world. You have your expedition, which are interesting enough on their own, but you will also meet a combat-loving monk, a mysterious fighter, as well as the most powerful being in the universe, and none of them feel generic, and none of them have warned their welcome on me. They can't be put in a box, and they aren't ones that can be considered weak in any single metric. In case you aren't aware of the story of Clair Obscur, then I'll provide the briefest of premises right here for you. Lumiere, a city in the middle of the ocean, and its population have been sending out expeditions of soldiers out into the world unknown towards a giant monolith that is inscribed with a number that is etched once per year by a monstrous creature simply known as the Paintress. Every year, the number decreases by 1, and every single person in Lumiere who is the age of the number that is inscribed on that monolith will die in what is called the Gamage. The expeditions simply started as an attempt to kill the Paintress and stop the seemingly inevitable fate of death at the hand of her, but as there have been 67 expeditions by the time that the game begins, it has been understood that this is more or less a suicide mission and has taken on the idea that each expedition will leave behind just enough information for the next one that will allow them to progress that much farther. Now, to continue on my praise for the writing, that sounds like a very heavy premise. And like I said before, it tackles a lot of deep concepts, and it tackles them respectfully. But from the 30-ish hours that I've managed to put into the game so far, Clair Obscur somehow, and I can't emphasize the somehow enough, balances all of that really heavy subject matter and depressing themes with character moments that will bring so much levity and laughter to cutscenes, as well as the occasional dialogue that appears while wandering around the maps of the game. This type of writing and the way it's executed while you're playing it feels like it should be impossible to balance with the core narrative of Clair Obscur, but throughout my time with it, I've shed tears, but also genuinely laughed at the interactions between these characters, and have had multiple instances where I get that special feeling that is non-quantifiable, but you know it when you feel it, where you have that realization where you love these characters. You get an idea of who they are, a swath of information about a lot of their lives before this expedition, and what they're going through on it, and all of it is simply wonderful. But this game is a true to form JRPG in a classic sense. With the exception of the Persona series, that style of game has basically fallen out of favor with the mainstream gaming crowds and even the general hardcore gaming crowd. You have to dig into indies to find most traditional turn-based combat RPGs nowadays. Sea of Stars from 2023 was the last one that made an even remotely big enough splash to be covered by big news outlets, and Clair Obscur hit 1 million sales in less than half the time it took Sea of Stars to. So what gives? What makes this game stand out so much that it's gotten universal praise, becoming potentially one of the highest rated games in Metacritic's history, currently standing at a 9.7 user score and a 9.2 with critics? Well, the previously mentioned aspects like the music and narrative surely add to that, the story and characters likely being the main driving force for a majority of the players. Mechanically though, the game sort of blows my mind in terms of being legitimately punishing and difficult, but finding a way to keep all of that well within the confines of the mainstream populace. I think that going over these things that ground Clair Obscur and make it so digestible to the millions of people who have played it is important, because it might give insight as to why it has resonated with all of those people. And I feel qualified to answer this because I am not one of those people that this game was really promoting itself to. I don't have much history with JRPGs. I've never played a Persona game. I've only briefly dabbled in any Final Fantasy game, and really offhand the only games that even might be considered in this genre that I've played, beaten, and enjoyed are the first 2 Paper Mario games, Off, Sea of Stars, and Omori. Sandfall Interactive took a lot of elements from other games in the genre, although it ends up feeling much more akin to Paper Mario than it does with most other entries in the genre, with a lot of its timing-based inputs, whether it's attacks or defensive abilities, but it also took a lot of influences from the Dark Souls series. So much so that I would even make an argument that this is a JRPG Souls-like to at least some extent. Like I previously mentioned, the combat is an old school turn-based system and relies on a classic 3-character party system where you can swap in other members of your party to be your main character, so to say. Now each character can level into specific stats such as vitality, might, defense, luck, and others. And this is all incredibly standard and very basic, but something that really puts a unique spin on this bare-bones leveling system is something that hints at a deep understanding and commitment of its party-specific build variety, and that is each weapon you could equip to your characters each give their own bonus with specific stats. As an example, one weapon could give an incentive to level into might and agility, or one might give a bonus to luck entirely. This leads to one layer of party planning, as you might have a character leaning heavily into one of those stats, so you would ideally want to give that character a weapon that supports that commitment. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because this is basically lifted straight out of RPGs, again, most notably, Dark Souls. This is where we start getting into the nitty-gritty, because when playing old JRPGs, like the older Final Fantasy games, you might have a suite of items such as resurrection items, health bonuses, damage dealers, and more. In most of these older style games, you would buy these items at a shop or find them throughout the game's world. This gives some real weight towards these items because you know that 1, they're finite, and 2, you found them. And that second one is really the best part about them. But it gives those items that classic RPG problem of not wanting to use them until the last second. Ending the game with 20 Phoenix Downs and 30 Super Potions is not uncommon in the world of JRPGs, and it's because of that finality that makes the players cautious to use them. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it does give the player a certain level of anxiety towards using them, whether or not that anxiety is warranted. What Clair Obscur does instead is simply limit your items to 3 specific things. 1, heal a character in your party. 2, give a character in your party action points, which we'll cover soon. 3, revive a defeated character. And that's it. You'll find quest items, but as far as specific battle items, you'll only ever have those 3 options. There is another item that you have in between combat, which fully heals your party, but we'll come back to that in a second. Now, while that might theoretically limit the tactics that you have in combat, what it actually does is keep that aspect of the game straightforward and streamlined. But what Clair Obscur does on top of that is genuinely brilliant, in my opinion, when it comes to JRPGs, and that is outright steal from the Souls series again, in the sense that every time you rest at a checkpoint, which are flags left behind by previous expeditions, all of those items that I mentioned a second ago will fully restock, leaving you full access to them for the next battle, and leaving you full access to heal your party in between combat. This will drastically reduce any anxiety and pressure that most players will ever have regarding item usage, and is really just a good way to make sure that players will see through to the next fight, knowing that despite all of their revives and health potions that they used in a single fight, they're literally 1 checkpoint away from getting them all back, no questions asked. This gives the game ample opportunity to lean into its difficulty pretty much as it wants. Because basically, between any large encounter, the player is practically expected to be at full power. While each individual battle ranges in difficulty, the freedom offered to the player by giving them this lenient system never makes the player feel hopeless, scared, or anxious to use their items, keeping them in the game, the flow, and always pushing the story forward. Because the exploration given to the player is pretty wide. Significantly more so than what I was expecting from the game when I heard about its length. If you beeline the narrative, you could probably beat the game in about 20 hours. But if you decide to take the time, fight optional bosses, dive into dangerous alcoves and twisted caves, then you are rewarded with not only highly desirable loot and experience, but incredibly powerful pictos, which you can use to help craft your ideal party. Now, as I said previously, I've never played much of the Final Fantasy series, and from what I have gleaned from my time on the sidelines when it comes to that series, the Picto system in Clair Obscur seems to work most similarly to the Materia system in Final Fantasy VII. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that's my impression. Throughout your time in the world, you'll find pictos that you can equip to your individual party members. Each one will give a specific ability, as well as most of them giving an additional bonus such as like crit chance increase, a maximum health bonus, or an increase in character speed which boosts their usage in combat. But every time that you win while one of these are equipped, the picto will slowly begin to fill up, and once you win 4 combat encounters with it, it will then become fully active and become a luminos, which gives all members in your team, not even just the chosen 3 of your party, the ability to equip that same ability, with the downside of not getting that additional bonus attribute that comes along with the normal picto, meaning no extra health bonus or crit chance increase. This allows you, if you give yourself the time and brain power towards this system, the ability to break this game in half. You could craft overpowered characters that can one-shot most normal enemies, never allowing a lot of basic enemies even the chance to attack you before you can kill them. Which, by the way, gives you an XP bonus gained at the end of combat encounters. The developers themselves said that their full intention with this picto system was for players to break the game, and while I don't think that I broke the game, so to say, I did have a blast with the squad with a character that would tank damage for the entire party, giving the entire team action points every time that they were dealt damage, giving myself basically unlimited action points every single turn. While this is likely the least broadly appealing aspect of Clair Obscur, as it tends to end to looking at menus for upwards to 20 to 45 minutes at a time as you hone in and craft the perfect squad, it is an incredibly rewarding system that players can either fully take advantage of, giving each game of Clair Obscur its own distinct and unique flavor geared towards every single person that plays the game, or they can just equip cool stuff. Either one is viable, either one works, and it's kind of fucking brilliant. So these aspects of the game, while ranging in accessibility, keep the momentum of Clair Obscur pushing forward, and alongside the ensembles of characters, rarely allows any real downtime. But how does the moment-to-moment gameplay feel? Well, I don't really know if there's a term for this style of level design, but I'm going to coin a term for it here. Explorable line level design. Just as an example, it feels very similar to the previously mentioned Sea of Stars in the sense that while you're mostly going down a straight line that has a bunch of interesting coats of paint across its 30-hour runtime, it does just enough with that very simple system that keeps it fun to explore. You'll have routes just off the beaten path that are easily visible or halfway hidden that can lead to previously mentioned loot or currency. It's incredibly simple at face value, but a very tricky thing to actually pull off and have feel natural whatsoever. Enemies are also easily distinguished on the map, which helps give clear direction and readability, and side quests are usually confined within the area that you discover them in, all going back to that simple yet enjoyable, explorable, straightforward level design. Now, does this mean that the game is easy or boring? No! Every combat encounter from practically the beginning of the game all the way until the end, except for maybe like the last 4 hours of the game really loses momentum, but other than that, each encounter is a series of incredibly fun, timing-based decisions that require active and reactive inputs from the player. When I compared this game to the Paper Mario games earlier in the video, it's mostly due to the fact that they utilize what Paper Mario arguably made famous with timing-based combat, meaning that in order to get the most out of your abilities, you will have to interact with the turn-based mechanics of combat in and outside of your standard attacks and special moves. Each character has a basic attack that can be modified with the pictos that you acquire on your journey, but will always do at least one hit of damage that will also boost your character's AP, which are action points. The more action points you have, the more options that will be available to that character during their next turn that can be used for that character's special attacks that you unlock with points that you earn during each level up. And on top of the heavy decision making that you have to make with the pictos and the luminous, every character's special moves that you unlock are limited to 6 options. So on top of building a character through the pictos and luminos, you also have to build the perfect set of skills that each character has, only furthering this deep investment in time and resources that is the peak of this type of game and genre. What makes this really awesome, though, is that up until now, this may sound like a very standard RPG system. But there are not only the specific abilities for each individual character, but each character in your party has a wholly unique system of mechanics that they must abide by. Gustav, for instance, has a mechanical arm that acquires the chroma, which is a currency, from enemies that will slowly or very rapidly charge up depending on damage dealt and received, that will deal exponentially high amounts of damage in one explosive punch for how high the meter is filled. Lune has a 4-star system that is filled up with her special attacks, and since she is essentially the mage of the game, depending on the elements used during those attacks, that element will fill up those stars, and depending on what elements are currently in the 4 points on her star, each attack can be boosted for extra damage, an additional hit, and a higher crit chance. Having each character with not only their own build that you crafted and honed in as best as possible, but potentially synergizing with each other member of your current party is not only fun and thought-provoking, but intensely satisfying and rewarding. And in my opinion, despite all of these moving parts, none of these systems are by themselves very complicated or hard to wrap your head around if you have any experience with games of this nature. Each cog in this complex interweaving of systems is taught to the player basically one step at a time, so none of this is overwhelming, which only helps add to its mass appeal. And speaking of mass appeal, let me just gush over the Paper Mario-esque timing minigames held within everyone's attacks. While nothing new and arguably even performed better in their red-fitted plumber counterparts, Clair Obscur's input-focused combat, in my opinion, should be the standard for turn-based RPGs from here on out. It keeps what would be a simplistic concept that leads to a lot of active downtime on both the player's turn as well as the enemy's turn obsolete. Now, you could make the argument that games like Paper Mario and now Clair Obscur, their combat is essentially quick-time events, and that is inherently a bad thing, but I don't think that QTEs are inherently bad, just often thrown in at inopportune times or placed on top of systems where they don't need to be or aren't even warranted in the first place. But with turn-based RPGs, this is the way to constantly keep players engaged in the most crucial moments possible. It allows the player to contemplate and decide in a thoughtful manner, really playing out what their turn will look like and even allowing the player to disengage in this one moment, but once you commit, it's on the player to remain engaged until it's their turn all over again. And now with the added inclusion of a dodge and parry system, it's only even better. When I went into detail about parrying in my Lies of P video and how I think that Souls games are at their best when focused less on dodging and more on a system such as parrying, I brought up the point that dodging keeps you actively pushing against the combat, whereas dodging in a Souls game literally removes you from the combat scenario, even if it's only for a few moments. I think that even in a turn-based RPG, when you include a mechanic like parrying, it only enhances it even further. There were so many instances during my playthrough of Clair Obscur where I was so honed in on the timing to my parries that I leaned forward. I danced with the game's music and the flow and rhythm of this game's unique style of combat. My arms would weave in and out as I made sure that I was in time with each enemy's attack patterns. And every single time that an enemy did an area of effect attack where we all had to parry at once, and I saw the words Expedition 33 performs a counter, I felt a sense of joyous camaraderie against the forces of evil in my soul. Now, I gotta say that while I do love parrying in games, there are actually 2 defensive options that Clair Obscur allows: parrying and dodging. Dodging allows for a full dismissal of attack should you be able to time it correctly, but parrying not only negates any and all damage from an attack, as well as also giving you a boost of AP, but it also performs a counterattack if you're able to parry every attack from an enemy, which deals massive damage in turn. Wow, that's amazing! Why would I ever want to dodge then? I can hear you asking. Well, the give and take with this system is that the dodge window is fairly unforgiving, but the parry window is almost diabolically small. I love parrying in games. I went into deep lengths as to discuss why in my Lies of P video. And I have to say that the parrying time for Clair Obscur is one of the most unforgiving that I have personally experienced. But don't take that as a negative. Yeah, it took me a while before I found a reliable groove with the game's sense of timing for its parries, but I have to say that once you find that rhythm, it is one of the most satisfying parries in any game I've ever encountered.
Get fucked.
Because of its turn-based nature, Clair Obscur allows you to fully invest in that timing because you're not being bogged down with worrying about positioning or anything else that you would be worrying about in a game like Sekiro or Lies of P. All of that to say, though, that the benefit for using dodging over the parries is that the dodge window is significantly broader and much more forgiving. So much so that the game literally tells you that you should probably try to practice with dodging before even attempting parries. Despite that, I personally did not even bother with the dodge system. I sat and handled excruciating losses, all dedicated to finding the timing for each enemy's parry. It did get to the point though that I was able to get the timing down efficiently enough that brand new enemies I could parry first try. All of these different systems working in tandem come together to perform the bulk of what Clair Obscur has to offer. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it is a showcase of good ideas, good mechanical concepts, and some light experimentation, all performed incredibly well and presented in a way that is consistently rewarding and knowing when to hold back its punches regarding its specific systems. And I want to clarify now that by the time I am writing and recording this portion of the video, I have beaten Clair Obscur. I want to go on record that while the first 2/3 of this game are basically perfect, in my opinion, the last act of the game lost a little bit of steam regarding its narrative. That's not necessarily the point of this video, because I'm personally focused on the mechanical aspects, but I do want to give that statement in this video just to have it on record. Because despite its lackluster third act, I still wouldn't trade this experience for anything. It's a testament to good ideas performed exceedingly well. Just because a work of art doesn't stick the landing doesn't mean that the work is truly diminished or an overall lackluster experience. You may choose to focus on how it ended, but for this video especially, I want to focus on the 75 to 80% of the game that truly blew me away. And I think on that note, I want to finish the video with this. I hear people talking about the success of Clair Obscur, and the takeaway seems to be, studios just need to allow developers to do what they want to do. And I think the implication is that if more big AAA studios do that, a good game will follow. But I think that a game like Clair Obscur proves that that's not all it is that you need. Good games come from good ideas, but good games do not inherently make a good game. You need a good idea, yes, but you also need a talented team, the ability to refine and shave down that good idea into something extraordinary. What makes Clair Obscur work so much in the end is that it has every single thing working for it in terms of development. But on top of that, the developers knew that you can have outdated or unconventional concepts for a game, but they knew exactly what to diminish or enhance to keep things so streamlined and immediate for general players while retaining literally everything about the core loop of those old games that made them so famous to hardcore gamers back then. In hindsight, it may seem effortless because you can see the final product, but I assure you that it is not. It took more than 5 years to get Clair Obscur to where it is now, to the point where so many people are singing its praises, and for good reason. But the team did not get to this point with a good idea. What Clair Obscur is more than just a good game, or even a great one. It's a reminder that passion, hard work, and yeah, good ideas need to be developed, worked on, fought over, tweaked, changed, tampered with, and more before they feel effortless. And Clair Obscur, as a final product, is an effortless examination into the near perfection of a genre.
For those who come after.
Tomato is a fluid, but it also a vegetable.
For those who come after.
Bro. I might cry. This is for those who come after? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? That fucking hit, bro. Oh my goodness.